Justin, what's cracking, my man?
Man, I'm excited for today's podcast. We have an amazing guest here to talk about diversity in sports, among other fun and important topics. We got Gronk catching footballs out of helicopters. We got Tiger Woods making his recovery. Man, overall, it's just going to be a good podcast. I'm excited, my man.
Yo, it's gonna be awesome. Also, I heard you got your first dose of the vaccine.
I did right here. Pfizer gang.
Pfizer gang. And is there like a hand sign or something like that? Where you gang or something like that?
I don't know.
There we go. Total BS podcast coming your way right now.
Yo, your fans just might turn into our fans. Be cool, it's just a part of this program. Spit your best 16 if you must. You not whack, you just sound whack rapping after us. For real.
Saul,
Yes.
I was gonna throw up another P, but I think that's a Pyrus, and I don't want to get anybody confused. I'm Pfizer, not Pyrus.
I appreciate that. Our next guest, I believe, is also a Pfizer recipient, and she's agreed to come on and talk about a little bit of diversity in sports. Talk about what she's got going on, and she's with the Blue Wire Pods. She's the director of communications. It's the one and only Miss Megan Reyes. How's it going, Megan?
Hello, everyone, and hi to you both. Thanks for having me. Yes, I am also Pfizer gang. So
there you go. There we go. We got to figure out what the hand signal is now because Justin got that ball rolling. So.
I gotta think about this one. We're gonna make it a movement.
So Megan, obviously, we came across your profile on Twitter first and foremost, and just love the stuff that you're putting out. Very much about inclusion and diversity. How did that all come about in terms of creating those shirts that are really cool? Let me just say that.
Thank you. I should have worn it today, but I was on two different speaking conferences the last 2 days where everyone made me wear it, and so I should do laundry. And someone actually asked me how many I have personally, and I said, "Oh, I have one." So I should probably do the lineup. But yeah, I believe so strongly in both diversity and inclusion in sport. And to your point, on International Women's Day, March 8th, I launched a shirt to really just spread how important this message and cause is. So it's a shirt that says more female, Black, Latinx, Indigenous, Asian, LGBTQ plus voices in sports. And I always want to preface that those are only some of the marginalized communities, both in sports and society. So it's not representative of the whole, but certainly just a small, thank you. Yeah, it's just a small part of the more voices we need. And the story behind it is actually kind of an uninteresting story in the sense that I don't even know where the idea came from. It just kind of came to my mind. It's something I believe so passionately in. Somebody asked me, you should do your own merch. And I sort of married the two, and that design you see there is the first outline and layout that popped in my mind. And I mocked it up, showed it to a few people, few friends, few people that represented each community. And everyone was like, this is going to do great. Did I think it was going to be what it is now? Absolutely not. I had a goal of 78 shirts. I was going to keep this thing going for a couple weeks through end of March. And now I'm at like over 700, and it's just not stopping anytime soon. And it's just, I know it's completely blown me away. I'm so grateful for everyone's support, but it's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
So why black and gold?
Okay, so
harboring that Wiz Khalifa is what she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
This was not a biased choice. I'm a diehard Saints fan. I grew up a Saints fan. However, that did not go into the planning of the shirt. I wanted something that was going to pop. I was playing with blues. I was playing with reds. I was playing with different colors, but something about the yellow just made it a little bit more neutral. And some people have made the same comment of like, oh, of course you picked a gold color, or some friends were like, oh, I'm so glad that you picked Steelers colors. Now I can wear it to games and such. But it kind of just worked out that way. I swear it had nothing to do with my Saints fandom.
Well, let's get to it. You're a woman in the sports industry, or were you with the Warriors and then the Athletic, and now you're with Blue Wire Pods. So you've seen it firsthand about diversity, inclusion. The Warriors are actually one of the organizations that celebrate that, I think, the most, and actually preach what they put out there. But in terms of women in sports, it can be a difficult trek to get into that ball game and really prove, quote unquote, that you belong. You know what I mean? And so what are you seeing out there? Obviously, on the heels of the Ncaa Women's Tournament and the lack of equality, man, which is just absurd. What are you seeing in terms of progress, things that are happening, and what are you seeing in terms of how far we really do have to go?
Sure. So many thoughts. I don't even know. Well, I'll look at it from a couple different facets. I'll look at it from being a woman who works in the industry on kind of on the behind the scenes side, and then also what it's like for women athletes. For myself, as a woman who works in the industry on behind the scenes, both in my experience on the team side and then also media, I think where we are now is we've done a better job at making sure we're putting women in different positions, especially positions of power. You look at Kim Ng, that's an incredible example. And some of the many others that I feel awful, I can't even think of their names off the top of my head, but there's many, many others, both in men's and women's leagues in positions of power. I still think we have so far to go. It's great that we're making progress, but there should just be more of us everywhere. And I always challenge companies and brands and teams to make sure that it's from a genuine place, of course, and not to check a box. And I think that's what's so important when it comes to any dialogue around diversity, whether we're talking gender or race, is to make sure it's from a genuine place and not because you just kind of have to do it from an optics perspective. I'm seeing the industry become more accepting as far as I think where this industry was just not that long ago. And it still kind of exists today in certain parts, that a lot of us women felt like we had to be competitive with one another because we felt like there were only so many spots. And it's just like a misinformed, I guess, concept that was created for us, that there's only so many spaces. So rather than being an ally, this person is now going to be my competition. Yeah. And I think we've gotten better at becoming a community. Social media has helped so much with that, I think. And that's sort of where I try to use my platform is I want other women, especially college students and young women aspiring to be in the industry, to see that you're not alone. I personally, and I don't know if everybody can speak the same way, every woman, but I could probably assume most, when I started in the industry in 2009, 2010, when I was in college, I felt alone because I didn't see enough women, let alone women of color, women that looked like me in the industry. And also social media didn't really exist. So it was harder to connect. So now that we're in 2021 and have all this technology and have the ability to just talk to one another. And I say I have all these friends that I've actually never met in real life, but I have all these friends who I can help them see that there are so many of us that are warm and welcoming and want you to succeed. I just hope that becomes a norm, because there still are pockets of the industry, as I'm sure with many other industries, where women are marginalized, that we are not competition, but we are all friends and this is a community. On the women athletes side, the NCAA was an incredible example of how far we still have to go. The problem I have with that is it wouldn't have become such public knowledge and nothing would have been done about it had social media not existed. Because I wasn't a college athlete, but if you talk to any woman who played college athletics, no one was surprised. This is how they've always been treated. Yeah. It's just, it became viral because of Sedona's TikTok, and because TikTok and social media exists where people can actually outcry and call for action. But this has been going on pre-Title IX, post-Title IX. It's never changed. And there's still so far to go. I mean, personally, there's the NCAA men's tournament, and then they call it the women's tournament, or they call it Final Four, and then they call it the women's Final Four. Or now there's actually the volleyball tournament going on that no one's really talking about. And there's still so far to go. I just hope that this is only the tip of the iceberg, but I really hope that the energy stays there as far as everyone calling for more and more and more.
Yeah, Twitter is so great to connect people. Like you said, there are so many people who I have never met in my entire life, but I consider them like great friends. Like one guy who comes on this podcast all the time, Jabari Davis. Mm-hmm. Saul and I can agree that we both think that he's an amazing guy. We consider him a great friend. We've never met him in person at all. So I think that right there is a classic case of just how Twitter connects people. But then it also exposes everything that's going on behind the scenes. You kind of get to see how the sausage is made. And with that, it puts pressure on the NCAA. So do you think with what happened at the NCAA tournament this year, and the excuse that, there wasn't enough room for the weight room was just a bullshit excuse, because Sedona would pan the camera over and there's this wide open warehouse where they could have a full weight room. So do you think now we're starting to turn a corner with social media and how the NCAA operates?
I mean, yeah, because I think these things can't be swept under the rug anymore. I think the hope was that nobody would have known about this, because the problem, if we're looking at the weight room specifically, is there was so much planning and logistics and intention behind that it wasn't a hodgepodge mistake. They knew exactly what resources were being supplied for the men and exactly what resources were not being supplied. They got yoga mats. They got a few yoga mats and a few dumbbells. Like, they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
But I think social media does help us turn that corner, because now, especially after the tournaments, all eyes are on what's going to happen next, because you can't make that mistake twice now, because now if that happens, you're just proving that you just kind of don't care.
Yeah.
So here's okay. We're probably gonna go down this rabbit hole here.
I like rabbit holes.
Okay, so when we're talking about the women versus the men, right? The first thing people want to point to is viewership and revenue. Okay. Okay. It's sometimes it's an unfair argument. However, it is a worthy one in terms of what we're comparing the two entities to be. For instance, the WNBA and the NBA. Okay, ticket sales, that viewership, like that all plays a part in terms of why NBA players get paid X amount of dollars and the women players get paid X amount of dollars. What is your argument in terms of, or not even an argument, but what are your thoughts in terms of how to combat that?
Sure. I mean, I understand. I sort of understand I sort of understand the revenue and the viewership argument that people make when they want to say women's sports will not succeed. Because we all know, yes, sports is a business model. I actually had, I'm gonna go on my own side rabbit hole. Someone the other week on Twitter tell me that I had replied to a tweet from my former employer, The Athletic, love them dearly, and it was about Megan Rapinoe's comments towards Draymond. And all I said was, like, Queen has spoken. Somebody replied to me and said, she may have spoken, but she's incorrect. Simple economics would help you understand this. And I have learned to, as I've gotten older, as I've gotten more active on social, I've learned and gotten better at leaving the trolls alone, but I could not leave this one alone. So I threw back in his face that I have a business degree. I understand simple economics. I actually didn't add in that my dad is a finance and economics professor, but thank you for that. Thank you for
subtle flex right there. Subtle flex. There you go.
Thanks for the feedback. So coming back to that, sure, it is a business model. And yes, there's supply and demand. But where I get frustrated with that is there is a demand. And what people want to say is, well, there's no supply because there's no demand. We are literally demanding for more women's sports on TV. And there's even that BBC article that came out the other day that was like the no shit Sherlock. Women's sports would succeed if they had more visibility. Yes, we know that. We've been saying this, like we have literally been saying this. So where it's a frustrating argument, while sure inherently you want sports as a business model, it has been proven time and time again, especially in the last year since the pandemic, that women's sports ratings do go up when you put them on TV. We saw that with the W last year in the bubble. We saw that with the NWSL last year, post World Cup. We saw it with the Ncaa Women's Tournament. We are continuing to see this trend. As long as you're delivering and providing the product, people are consuming. And so that's why it's such a frustrating argument, because it's like it's a chicken and an egg. As long as you continue to not provide the product, the ratings won't go up. It's really actually quite as simple as that. So that's why I get so frustrated, because people point to numbers and they pull out all these graphs, and it's like, yes, but you're leaving out the very simple fact that they're just not being put on TV. And the more you do it, I guarantee you will see different trends.
Well, don't a lot of WNBA players go overseas?
They do.
Yes.
Because there's more money opportunities overseas?
Yes.
Basketball, this isn't soccer. Like, this isn't where soccer's more popular in Europe or any parts of the country. I mean, basketball is a very popular sport in the United States. And to the fact that a lot of WNBA players are going overseas to get better financial opportunities is just absolutely absurd. And I think a big part of that, like you said, is just the amount of exposure that they're getting.
Well, it's also the structure of the WNBA in itself, right?
Sure.
Like a 32-game season doesn't do shit. Let me just say it like that, okay?
Yeah.
If you want to get compensated fairly and equally to the men, like, I do think that they need to change that structure. You need to have, at least 60 games, I think, and you need to have an extended playoff. These 3-game series, they don't do it for me. It gives you a short window to see the excellence of these women. That's why they have to go overseas and play 50, 60 games, and they have a much better system over there, and they get paid. And they get paid in the millions. Like Diana Taurasi, I think she was getting some like between $1 and $2 million when she was playing in Russia. Like, she's the GOAT. Like, she should be getting that much here. And there's more exposure here in America. But that's part of the problem, what Megan was alluding to. But Megan, when we circle back around and we talk about equality, one of the things that has kind of come up, and I apologize for throwing you a curveball here, I do. But one of the things that I was thinking about, both because of a lack of education in terms of what this really means, but also what the future has in store. The trans community, okay? When we're talking about the trans community, and obviously there's the debate out there whether men that alter their physical being to be a woman or identify as a woman can compete with women and vice versa. There's that argument out there. What are your general thoughts on that particular argument and how those things should unfold? Because honestly, I think part of the problem here is the lack of education and the lack of understanding. And I'll be completely honest here. I too suffer from this lack of education because I just don't understand. And it's hard to bring up that conversation with somebody that might be in that role without feeling like I might offend them if I'm just asking general questions about like why.
Yeah, education, especially on these types of topics, are so important. And I'll be also transparent that there's so much more I could educate myself on. There are a ton of resources and a ton of organizations that do a really great job of advocating for trans athletes. Like, pretty shameless plug, but the Burn It All Down podcast on the Blue Wire Network, they spend a lot of time talking about, well, really just they call themselves like the sports feminist podcast, but talking about these different rights. And they do spend a lot of time talking about trans rights in sports. So there are certainly so many things that I need to still educate myself on. But I do understand that for a lot of people, there's just that lack of knowledge. But what I appreciate is when people admit that and just say, like, I want to learn. That's what's most important, really, with any of these conversations, is the willingness to listen, and most importantly, the willingness to listen and learn. Where what I believe it with any other marginalized group, is that trans athletes have the right to play in their sport with their identified gender just as anyone else. And so there's all these laws that are being passed in almost half the states. I mean, I don't know the exact number, but so many states are trying to pass these laws banning trans athletes from playing sports. And it's just so upsetting, because if you really look at what sport is to us as human beings, it is something that both when you're playing it, it makes you feel good. You're athletic, you're being active. It's good for your body. It's an outlet to do something that you love. And for us as fans, it's something that we get to all come together around. Hello, Twitter. Like, that's literally why Twitter's so fun. That's why we're on this podcast together, watching games with your friends and your family. So at the core, we're all just humans that have something that we want to bond over and have a passion. And regardless of however a person identifies gender wise, they should be able to do the thing they love. And that's really that's sort of my, I don't know, how to say this. That's sort of my, everyone should love with love answer. But yeah. That's really at the core what I believe with so much of this. Like, if a man identifies as a woman, if a trans man identifies as a trans man, he should be able to play in the sport that he wants to play with other people who identify as the same gender.
For sure. I think, we can go down this rabbit hole forever, I'm sure. But I think one of the main arguments would be the perception of a competitive disadvantage or a competitive advantage for somebody, depending on when they make that transformation, and in relation to, like, for instance, the biggest argument would be a man identifying as a woman and then competing with women. That's the sticking point where, for a lot of people, I think, and I think that's where the lack of education comes into play. If people understood what that transformation really means. There's a lot of things that go into that transformation. It's not just, a cut and a snip and that's it, like, I'm good. No, it's far more complicated than that. And so, the education part of that is the most valuable, for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Just go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, what's next for you, Megan? I mean, what are you currently working on right now? Any important projects work-wise?
Lots of things going on. I mean, just to touch on the merch again, lots of exciting things. Again, I had no idea it was going to become what it has.
Which, by the way, who's the one person where you're like, whoa, they're rocking my shirt? That's pretty cool.
I see every single order that comes through, and trust me, every single order that comes through, regardless of who it is, I definitely freak out a little bit, because it's just so exciting. It doesn't matter who it is, but I see some of the names, and some of them have not gotten it yet. But it's very exciting to see media and influencers and athletes starting to order, and so I'm very excited about who may be getting these shirts soon. More to come on that.
They're like her kids. They're all great. There's no pecking order. They're all great.
They're all great. I love all my kids equally. I just didn't expect it to become what it has. I think it's an incredible case study of social media, because that's truly the only marketing effort I've put behind it is social, and it's snowballed into what it has. But some exciting projects that are coming specifically for the shirts. And then work-wise, I mean, I've been at Blue Wire for a little over 2 months now, and we're working on some really incredible things. We have our live podcast studio coming at Wynn Resort, right? Vegas.
Oh, Wynn Resort. Yeah.
Yes. So we are having a live podcast, interactive, gorgeous space built in the Wynn Resort lobby. They had say no more. You want us to come hang out in Vegas and create content around sports, we are there in a heartbeat. Kevin, our founder, actually posted a photo this morning on social that there is now a sign up in the Wynn Resort that says Blue Wire Podcast Live Studio coming soon. So that's very
dope.
Exciting.
It's dope.
Incredible. It's right in the middle of their lobby, and we're going to do lots of fun things. We're going to bring our podcast hosts in, content creators, influencers, athletes. We're just going to make some really cool stuff. While we are a sports audio company, we want to be more than that. We want to get into lifestyle, comedy, culture, fashion, all the things that sort of encompass to what sports represent. So lots of really fun projects. Every single day I'm hearing about said content creator, said athlete that we're gonna work on some projects for. So it's really exciting. It's only been a couple months. The company itself is only a few years old, but we're ready to make some big splashes. So I wish I could share more, but that's just going to be my little bit of teaser of all the
Okay.
She's got an embargo. You've said too much. She's gonna get a needle to the neck here in a second.
Yeah, he's going to tell me to tell all the things, but no, I'm just going to dangle the carrot.
That's awesome.
Las
That's
Vegas.
awesome. Yeah,
Las
I mean,
Vegas, wow.
there's a lot more
man.
things that are worse than going to Vegas and hanging out and doing some cool stuff. So that's definitely a bucket list thing. There you go. Well,
Exactly.
Megan, congratulations on all this stuff. You know, the Blue Wire, obviously the position at Blue Wire. Also, you also worked at the Athletic, the Warriors. I mean, you're like so damn young. This is crazy. Like you've done so much in such a small amount of time. It's phenomenal. I can't even say enough about that.
I'm very blessed. Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
For sure. Megan Reyes from Blue Wire Pods. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch up soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Megan.
All right. So Megan dropping some knowledge, especially on the
That was great.
You know, on the diversity front. I kind of threw her a curveball a little bit with the trans question, but you know, I think that's a legit question that, you know, I have questions about it. And
me too.
You know, having to educate ourselves on this topic is something that is, yeah, I mean, it is here. Like we need to. And I figured asking her a question to get her perspective, since she's heavily involved in that kind of diversity forefront, would be good.
Well, so much is changing in the world, and it's changing at a rapid pace, right? So I think for us as good human beings and being loving and welcoming to others, because listen, everybody's going to be different. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a tolerance level that we all need to have as people. And I think rather than just being so closed-minded and ignorant, we need to be willing to sit down, educate ourselves, and hear different voices, because you never know. And unfortunately, I've seen, you know, some people who are just always closed-minded and will never be willing to hear others. But I just think now, with so much changing, we need to do better as people and be willing to hear these different voices. So absolutely. You know, and you know, there's a lot of stuff out there that we love about the world. There's a lot of stuff that we don't love about the world, but you know, change is inevitable. And the more you embrace it, and the more you learn about it, and the more you accept it, the better off we're all going to be. And I think that's a good thing. And speaking of change, the University of Arizona football team is going through some major changes right now. And today, actually, and I know you're going to be a busy guy later on this afternoon, the spring football game. And they have two special guests. They have Teddy Bruschi, former U of A alum, or a U of A alum, and Rob Gronkowski, Gronk, as we all know, him, obviously. And my man Gronk did something pretty cool yesterday, breaking a world record by catching a football out of a helicopter.
You got this one. You got this one. Come on, Gronk.
The best part is Teddy Bruschi.
It is. I mean, that's just, you can watch that on a loop over and over and over again. It just never gets tiring. You know, we're going to watch it one more time because it's just that awesome.
Teddy Bruschi. Oh my God. That's so great, man.
That's just so awesome, man. It's just great content right
there.
Overall.
Believe it or not, that's a football team that's riding a 12-game losing streak and went winless during the COVID-19 affected season. So the fact that there is just so much buzz around this program is pretty remarkable, what Jedd Fisch has done. But think about this. Rob Gronkowski has been an NFL player since 2010? That's when he got drafted. And ever since then, well, actually after his rookie season, he hasn't been to the University of Arizona. He's never been back to his old stomping grounds for a spring game, for a game in general. They've had a bobblehead night for Gronk. They've done promos for Gronk, but they never actually had Rob Gronkowski come back. And for him to come back to the U of A and set a Guinness World Record, because it was 600 feet in the air. Yeah. The old record was 563 feet. for Gronk to do that, come back to his alma mater, man, I think is incredible. And man, I'm just thinking about all the drinks that he's consuming during this weekend, because Gronk is a party animal, and now he's back in his element. He's back at Party Central.
Oh, I can't even imagine what's going on right now down at the University of Arizona. I mean, Gronk is a special kind of dude, right? He's the kind of dude that you feel like you would want to go party with, but you only want to go party with like at the beginning of the party, because if it gets too late, you don't want to be around for him like smashing windows or just doing crazy stuff. So I mean,
you don't want to hang out with Gronk after 1 a.m.
No, you don't. No, you don't. He's definitely going Hulk smash on a lot of things, I'm sure.
He's like a party gremlin.
But that's also, the cool thing about, some of these programs around the country, right? They embrace what it is that you are a part of. And I think that's what Jedd Fisch has done at the University of Arizona. He's embraced the atmosphere of being on a college campus. And I think so many coaches are so serious and so like bottom line about what they're doing that they ignore the fact that, Justin, let's be real. You and I have covered this program for several years, me being disconnected for the last 2. But for a large part of our student years, it was like athletics was in an ivory tower, and then there's everybody else. And I feel like that joining of the two was vital. And the reason why you had so much success and so much community buy-in early on with the Lute Olson era, Dick Tomey era, you had, the students felt like they were a part of it. And then I felt like there was a little bit of a disconnect. It's great to see that there's a little bit of a merging of the two now. And then you're bringing in Tommy Lloyd and as part of this, and Adia Barnes has been great in the community. Coaches that do well in the community typically do well on the field, and it's because they want to support you. They love the U of A, but they want to buy into you just as much. And I think that's what's so important about this.
Well, they also want to relate to you.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I couldn't relate to Sean Miller. I couldn't relate to Rich Rodriguez. They were just very rigid people. I couldn't relate to Kevin Sumlin because, he would show up in these like $10,000 suits looking very lavish, and you just always could tell that, Kevin Sumlin was here and everybody was kind of down here. But that's just the reputation that he built because he was a high-profile college football coach at Texas A&M at one point in his career.
Yeah.
And then he comes to Arizona, and it's a job where you actually have to grind and hustle and put every ounce of your energy into the program because it's not Texas A&M, and he just never really got that. And going back to the relation piece, you never saw Kevin Sumlin out in the community or doing as many social media posts as a guy like Jedd Fisch. Like Jedd Fisch is embracing Tucson, and he has the program with its arms wide open, just welcoming everybody that's willing to hop on the bandwagon right now. Yeah. And you never got that with the previous coaches. And in a college town, in college towns, that's important because
it's super important.
It's all we got.
Super important. I spent a year in Manhattan, Kansas, and Bill Snyder is a legend for K-State. And one of the things that Bill Snyder did early on is he had great community relations to the point where everybody bought into him. You're talking about a 20,000 person town that on game day changes to 67,000 people in the stadium. That's 3 times the local population. Why? Because everybody loves Bill Snyder, because he built that program from one of the worst in college football to where it is today by not only getting the type of people that he wanted in that program, but also endearing himself to the local community and wanting to be a part of the fabric of that community. And I think that's what's the most important part here is that you need to buy in. One of my favorite movies is Crazy Stupid Love. I know it's silly, whatever. But in that scene, there's a scene where Steve Carell is kind of going through a midlife crisis. He's getting divorced, all this stuff. And Ryan Gosling is trying to teach him how to be like a more smooth man, right? Like a ladies' man, whatever. And he was like, yeah, I got these pants at the Gap. And Ryan Gosling walks out, and Steve Carell chases him. He's like, what's wrong? And he's just like, Cal, be better than the Gap. And he slaps him in the face. He's like, be better than the Gap. And in my estimation here, it's like, hey, be better than the last guy. And the way you do that is by endearing yourself to the community, and don't think that you are too important to replace, because you're not. None of us are. Anybody can be replaced. Nobody's more important than the school and the community. They're just not. There's not one. I've never subscribed to that. That's one thing about, sitting in front of Sean Miller in 2017 and 18 when the FBI investigation was coming about, and he had his spiel about, I can't wait for the truth to come out, and I've never done this, whatever. And I sat there and I just thought, like, I hope this guy's telling the truth, A, and I really hope that there's a point in time here in the short-term future where I can start to buy into who this guy is as a man, because I don't know anything about him, and he's been the coach at the University of Arizona for almost a decade. Like, I should know more about him. And I'm not saying like we need to have paparazzi, and I'm not saying we need to know everything about his kids or anything like that, but damn, outside of X's and O's, what are you about? You know what I mean? Like, what's your favorite food? Like, oh shit, Fish loves pizza. I love pizza. Oh, Fish went to No Anchovies. I love no anchovies. Okay, now we have a connection and we don't even know each other. And you were just talking about it with Megan Reyes a little bit ago. Twitter and social media has made that so much easier for people to connect. And if you don't take advantage of that opportunity, you're missing a big portion of involvement from everybody that surrounds you. And I think that's what Jed Fish has done. I think that's what Adia Barnes does. We'll wait to see about Tommy Lloyd and how he does. But, man, be better than the gap.
Exactly. I love it. And, the people that are in at the U of A right now are just so personable. They're relatable. The story about Tommy Lloyd that I just sat back and was like, dude, you're like a normal dude. When he was a volunteer assistant at Gonzaga for those 2 years before he was officially on Mark Few's staff, he was unpaid. He did not earn a single paycheck being a volunteer assistant at Gonzaga. So how did he pay the bills? Well, his wife had a job at Macy's, and they were just living paycheck to paycheck every single month. And Tommy Lloyd said, no. You may think it was rough then. Those were the best years of my life. It was just us two, and I was starting my passion and my dream, and I had my partner there with me every step of the way, helping me out any way that she could. And hearing that, I'm like, dude, I know more about Tommy Lloyd just in that 30 minutes of talking to him than I ever did with Sean Miller. And that's just the kind of people that they are. And if that's how Sean Miller operates, so be it. I'm not going to sit here and say like Sean Miller's a bad person, because I've had some off-the-cuff conversations with Sean Miller, but it was always about the Pittsburgh Steelers. We just talked about who the Steelers are playing, the guys that are injured, this and that. But it's publicly known that Sean Miller's a diehard Steelers fan. So that's the only thing I know about Sean Miller. He's from Pittsburgh. He's a big football fan, likes the Steelers, went to the University of Pittsburgh, but outside of that, not so much.
Yeah.
And yeah,
it's pretty crazy. But moving along, we were talking about crashes and stuff like that. Oof. Tiger Woods, unfortunate car accident, but he is starting to make a recovery, and he actually posted to his Instagram, which I'm about to pull up here, and he looks like he's on the mend. He's looking pretty good, still looking fit as always, but he's got his dog on the golf course, and I guess this is one of the golf courses that he's designed and is in the middle of renovating. So general thoughts on Tiger Woods and his possible comeback here, hopefully within the next year.
I love it. And I remember a couple years ago, or a few years ago, after he was dealing with the back surgery, and a lot of people were not really sure whether he's going to come back or not. And then he posts a video of him hitting the driver, saying feeling good, back on the course, and everyone was like, no way, is Tiger Woods really going to come back? And then this dude comes back and wins the freaking Masters in 2019. Mm-hmm. When I heard about this car accident, I was not thinking about his comeback. I didn't want to see golf's God return to his element and be Tiger Woods again. I just wanted Tiger Woods to be healthy and alive again. Mm-hmm. But to see him on the course with his leg wrapped up, smiling with his dog next to him, it gets me giddy to think about the possibility that Tiger Woods could come back to golf. But I just think, right now it's all about one step forward or one step in front of the other, just getting better one day at a time and getting back and just being available for your kids. Tiger Woods has been through so much in his life. He, may have more time to spend with his kids now. And thinking about stuff like that just makes me really happy.
Well, I think, and honestly, when you have a long layoff like this, I think that's, he's had a history of back issues. And I think this could only help, right? As long as he didn't get, further injured from the car accident with his back. But, it could probably give him a little unplanned rest, but a good rest.
That's a good point.
You know what I mean? And so looking forward to having him back as well. But, I keep going back to the Tiger Woods documentary that ran on HBO a couple months ago, which I was not a big fan of. But there was this one scene where they were going into the final day of the Masters in 2019, and Ncaa was like, yeah, I remember interviewing guys, and they were like, they were the young guys. They had never seen Tiger coming down the stretch of a major, in contention. And he was like, yeah, and a lot of these young guys were like, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And
the fuck you do.
Yeah. And Ncaa saying, yeah, the fuck you do. You don't want Tiger in that stage at that moment, because there's a lot of pressure on everybody else. And sure enough, everybody faltered, and Tiger walked through the door with another green jacket, 15th major of all time. And so hopefully he can make a full recovery. Maybe hopefully he'll be back on the golf course here in the short term or in the future and competing in majors again. That would be great. But unfortunately, as we speak about this, there is another, I hate to bring it up, but the unfortunate accident with Terence Clark, who was not fortunate enough to survive a car accident this week. The Kentucky basketball player, only 19 years old, passed away, in a car accident this week. And a lot of love and support has been poured out to not only him, but his family for this unfortunate and untimely death.
I'm just sad, really. This was a guy who was going to be a draft pick. He was going to turn pro and live out his dreams as an NBA player. And he was a part of the Kentucky basketball program. John Calipari just developed a great, tight-knit relationship with him, as he does with every single one of his players that comes through that program. And how could you not? Coach Cal is just an unbelievable person. But Terence Clark was just such a young man, 19 years old, had his whole life ahead of him. I was just thinking about, what my life was like at 19 years old. And to think, like, for it to end at that point in my life, I just feel for his mother. I feel for his family members, because they have to see their loved one, who was just such a talented person, but also a great person. Hearing all the stories about how he was as a person and how he always lit up the room with his personality, getting to know Terence Clark just by the quotes and the perspective that a lot of people have provided, it just makes me sick to my stomach, hearing that news. And I think what's right is the Boston Celtics should have an honorary draft pick for Terence Clark, because he grew up in the Boston area. He was a Celtics diehard. There are photos of Jason Tatum running down the court, and Terence Clark is the only one standing up screaming because he's such a diehard Celtics fan. I think the Boston Celtics should find a way to give him an honorary pick, have a member of his family accept it on his behalf, and I think it would just be such a great tribute. And rest in power, Terence Clark.
For sure. It's a sad turn of events for that young man, and hopefully his family can find some peace in their heart as we move forward. When somebody passes away that suddenly and unexpectedly, it can really shock not only the people closest to him, but obviously people around him. Kelly Oubre paid tribute to him on his shoes the other day. A lot of countless other NBA players have really taken this one to heart, and it's unfortunate that should happen. But so hate to move along on from a somber note, but I would like to thank Megan Reyes for joining us today on the Total BS podcast. Great conversation about diversity, the WNBA, the NBA, college athletics, the trans community, the whole 9 yards. If you didn't get a chance to listen to it, we will have it on our podcast platforms as well. And we got a lot of cool things coming up ahead, a lot of cool guests. So as always, Justin, tell them where they can find us.
Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you can listen to a podcast, Total BS is on there. And we're also on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Give us a like and a follow there. And then to watch the live stream, you can check us out on Facebook, or you can subscribe to the Total BS YouTube page.
There you go.
Still undisputed heavyweight champions, Total BS podcast.
There you go. Always undefeated on this podcast. So that's for Justin Spears. I'm Saul Bookman. We'll see you next time. We'll see you when we see you. Peace.
Yo, your fans just might turn into our fans. Be cool, it's just a part of this program. Spit your best 16 if you must.